reason I overate wasn't because I was weak or I was broken, or just because I didn't know any other way of managing my emotions.
Life coaching really holds up a mirror so that you see what your brain is creating for you, right? Why is that the last resort for so many people?
I feel like I'm an emotions expert, but still, every day I'm diving in deeper and deeper with my kids.
Our whole family dynamic changed. The moment I started managing my emotions, understanding my emotions, and handling them in a different way.
Help us understand the line between where we take action to change our lives or we accept our lives.
When you can actually accept your current reality exactly how it is, that can be the fuel to change.
Welcome back to the Happy Human Podcast, fellas and ladies. We are here today with another episode. Seema, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm really excited about this episode because I never would have put this guest. She's got two areas that she loves to focus on, and I never would have put them together. So I'm really excited for the listeners to see what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited because we continue to go international. We have today Dr. Amruti Choudhry from the UK. So it's her afternoon while it's our morning. And I'm really excited because, one of the things that people always talk about or think about is their health. As we get older, it's lifespan and delaying aging and death is sort of a problem that's unsolvable, and we put a lot of effort into it, especially now because there's so much emphasis on supplements and cold plunging and sauna and things like that. And we've had Kunal, we had K-Mac on, we had Preeti Gandhi on, we had Dr. Umesh Wadhwani on, all somehow talking about health and fitness, but all of those folks rightfully focused on exercise and nutrition. So we really wanted to bring you someone who approaches weight loss and getting healthy and all the things related to fitness from a totally different perspective. So Dr. Choudhry, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. Tell us all the things, your qualifications, and give everyone an introduction of who you are.
Thank you so much for having me on, you guys. It is such an honor to be here. So I'm Amruti. I am a doctor from the UK. So I'm in London. I am a mother of two young boys. They're 9 and 7. I'm a wife. I have so many hats, but the reason I'm here is because I have gone on my own journey. And it's a journey of kind of understanding myself and actually achieving the goal that I thought I could never achieve. And that is permanent weight loss. I was always the child, who was overweight, and I felt so much shame. And that's how I got through so much of my education, because I was like, okay, don't feel those emotions, just eat, and that's how I got through so much. It was a tough one, but I basically started off as a junior doctor, and I got married. And I got married to my amazing husband, Rick, who is from a different part of India to us. So I'm from Gujarat. They're from near Haryana. So the cultural differences were quite a lot. And I lived with the in-laws for a little while. I was doing my A&E rotations. So I was doing a lot of night shifts and, like crazy long hours and things like that. And this is the time that I just got married. So we were having some trouble kind of adjusting to married life. And I had a lot of struggles with my in-laws. So that brings me on to like, wow, how did I survive? I used to eat biscuits in the A&E kitchen because I needed to get over the stress of what was going on in my actual life. And the thing is that may sound quite cliche, but I'm I'm now a GP, and I understood all, like, this isn't what you should be doing, like what's going on. But that was my stress response. That's how I was able to manage it. And so after my marriage, I gained about 3 stones, and we then moved out. The problem
For us Americans, what is a stone?
A stone is about 7 kilos. Do you use pounds or kilos?
We use pounds, but 2.2 pounds per kilo, guys.
Yeah, so it's basically about, is it 14 pounds in a stone, I think?
Yeah.
So I gained, so what would that be?
43 pounds.
Something like that. And so it was like a lot of weight. And I was like, oh gosh, this is a lot. What's going on? I'm not sure what I need to do here. So I tried all the diets under the sun. And then I got pregnant with my first child. And I gained another 3 stone in that pregnancy. And
Oh, wow.
and then I lost a little bit. And then I got pregnant with my second child. And the same thing happened because what I was telling myself at the time, I didn't know, but what I was telling myself is, it's okay, a little bit won't hurt. I'm eating for my baby, even though I knew subconsciously, like I knew from my medical knowledge that that's not the case. And so
Yeah.
after the birth of my second child, I was 92 kilos. So I know BMI is not as accurate, but that's a BMI of about 39 for me. And I was like, okay, I need to do everything under the sun. And so I had 42 kilos to lose, so 92 pounds to lose to get to my normal kind of range. And I tried everything: Weight Watchers, Slimming World, keto, intermittent fasting, all the things, calorie
Yeah.
counting. Nothing really helped until I heard on a podcast once that it's your thoughts that create your results. And I was like, oh my gosh, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
The medical degree, I've already got a medical degree, I've already got a psychology degree. So I'm really into mind management, but I didn't know how to put it into practice. So I came to this point in my life where I wanted to hire a life coach to help me manage my mind and actually deal with some of the emotional reasons why I used to overeat. So I hired a life coach thinking, what? I don't know what this is. This doesn't really make much sense to me, but I'm going to go for it because it's like my last resort. And through that, the vast majority of what we coached on was my mother-in-law and actually dealing with those things in my life, dealing with my anger towards my kids and not being able to manage that, the things that were going on in my career and how I wasn't able to manage that, and also my relationship with myself. And the reason I tell you this is because the reason I overate wasn't because I was weak or I was broken or anything like that. It was just because I didn't know any other way of managing my emotions. So through the
Yeah.
life coaching, I learned how to manage my mind and actually really piece apart what I was thinking, how that made me feel, what actions I was taking, and what results that created in my life. But it also helped me really get in touch with my emotions and actually understand why I was eating so that I didn't need to, give in to my urges to eat and actually deal
Yeah.
with those sensations in my body. And it allowed me to deal with all the things in my life that led to the overeating. Because if you just focus on the food and the
Yeah.
diet and the exercise, you're not dealing with that root cause. And that's why so many people struggle. And so when I found this out, and I was like, oh my gosh, not only have I lost 92 pounds, I was like, that's nearly half my body
Wow.
weight. I changed my
Yeah.
relationship with my husband. Like I was much calmer with him. I wasn't needing so much from him. I was a much calmer mum, and I healed my relationship with my mother-in-law. So I was like, I need to tell this to the world. I need to teach this to the world. And so
Yeah.
that's what I did.
I love it. I love it. I have a follow-up question, and I'm going to put you on the spot right out of the gate
Do
here.
it.
We did keto, we did paleo. I'm sure you did multiple gyms
Yep.
in the US. We would try Barry's Boot Camp,
Yep.
we try Orange Theory Fitness,
Yep.
we would do CrossFit,
Yep.
then we would get hurt and we would start over. But you said something that really caused my ears to peak, that life coaching was the last resort. And let's delete the words life coaching and just say mind management, because that's what life coaching is. Life coaching really holds up a mirror so that you see what your brain is creating for you, right? Why is that the last resort for so many people? And now, having been there, looking back and saying, I could have saved a lot of heartache, a lot of stress in my relationships, a lot of personal angst, and maybe even some parts of your health could be improved if you had gone to the last resort as your first option. And what would you say to someone who's out there that still thinks, hey, Amruti, I'm in my 40s. I've been doing life for 40 years. And everyone around me tells me I'm pretty damn good at it. I got a lot of money. I got an education. My kids are happy. We have a nice house. Look, let me tell you, Amruti, we have a BMW or a Mercedes or even a Lamborghini. And those things are only for the top 1%. So you know what? I'm doing life pretty good. And I know I've got some flaws. We're human. We have to have flaws. I get angry. I have some weight. I'm not in the best shape. I'm tired. Of course, I have small kids. I have a busy job. What would you say to that person to maybe flip them to say, mind management is your answer.
Mm.
And you need to go there first before you try weight loss, exercise, the gym, therapy, antidepressants, Ozempic, anything else that is available in mass market.
Firstly, what I would say to them is I would not preach. I would just offer my perspective because they're going to come to their own decision, how they're going to come to their decision. But what I would say to them is, how is this going for you? Because the reason why you are doing so well in other areas of your life, but still struggling on this area, there must be a reason for that. And how has the gym and the, like all the diets and the boot camps and all of that, how has that gone for you? And then I'd go there. And most of my clients, what they say is they worked once, but now they no longer work for me.
Yeah.
I have children now. I have a busier job. I'm looking after elderly relatives. I'm doing so much more. So the things that used to work don't work now. And also I'm getting older. And so it's impacting my hormones and things like that. So I would ask them, is this still working for you? If it is and you're happy with it, carry on doing what you're doing. Some people love calorie counting. Some people love, like just exercising. And if it works for them, amazing. Keep doing what's working for you. But for the vast majority of people that it's not helping by just doing what they used to do, I would say, I wonder, are there any times that you eat when you're not actually physically hungry? And most of them would say, yeah, I eat a little bit when I'm in the evenings when I'm a bit bored, or just to kind of like reward myself, or I've had a long day. Of course I deserve it. And that's what I would say. I would say emotional overeating is not eating just when you're stressed. It's eating any time you're putting food in your mouth when you're not physically hungry. And so much of that is eating when you're happy, eating when you're excited, eating to connect with people. And especially in the South Asian community, this is huge because food is so integral to our social life, And it's kind of like, okay, someone has passed away, let's eat. Someone is getting married, let's eat. It's a wedding, let's eat. Anything, let's eat, right? And so much of the work that we have to do is looking at, okay, how can I still connect with these people without needing to eat if I'm not hungry? And that's where the coaching comes in, because so many people are like, okay, well, it's fine. I won't eat. But then the auntie says, come on, have the samosa. Come on. And then they're like, oh, I can't let her down. Okay, let me just have it, And all those moments lead to the emotional overeating.
You said something so powerful there, which was, this people pleaser, especially in women, that tends to come out as a daughter-in-law, right? My parents actually programmed some very antiquated belief systems into my head because that's the generation that was their belief paradigm. It wasn't wrong. I'm not faulting them, but that was what they grew up with, right? This is the role of the daughter-in-law, is to be obedient.
Yeah.
You don't cause waves. You don't this, you don't that. Now, thankfully for me, my mother-in-law is amazing. She's just, I cannot get enough of her. Hi, Mom. But it does come into play when you're sitting there going, oh, well, if I don't eat, then I'm going to create more problems, right? It's better for me to just eat the samosa or eat the leftover, like little bit of sak left. Because then, like that's the big thing in my house. It's like, oh, kaijana, like eat it. Because then otherwise I'll have to put the leftovers in a dabu, and the dabu, there's no room in the fridge. And I love that you talk about food in relation to family, because it is just so ingrained.
Yeah.
But also for men as well. We've been talking about women and mother-in-laws, and I can see where you were going earlier. But someone recently said to me that when you go home and your mom wants to cook something for you and you really don't want it, right? For whatever reason, your health reasons, or it doesn't taste good, or maybe your digestion has changed. Don't you just say, fine, I'll eat it to make them happy because they've already cooked it? What's the big deal to you to eat it, right? If you have kids, you should maybe turn the volume down. But the alternative, if you don't eat it, is like you're an asshole and you're telling your own mom who raised you that you don't want to eat the thing that she makes any longer, right? How do you balance that? Because gosh, I don't want to be that son who's ungrateful and say no to a family member who's cooked something, whether it's your mom, your mother-in-law. How do you balance that? How do you reconcile that so that we can hold our space?
This is a tough one because this is the root for so many people, this is one of the main things that they struggle with. And I always ask them what do they want to do? And they will
Yeah.
often say, I don't want to eat that. It doesn't feel good in my body. I don't really like that
Mhm.
anymore. It's not my preference anymore. And
Yeah.
so I ask them what happens or what do they feel when they think about it, saying that to their family member. And they often feel
Mhm.
like guilt or shame or fear or any of those kinds of emotions. So we really work on
Right.
feeling some of those emotions in the body, because the truth
Mhm.
Mhm.
is these are normal human emotions that are going to come up. And the
Mhm.
thing
Right.
is, the more we try and, especially in South Asian culture, we've been taught and conditioned that any negative emotion is bad. You should not be feeling angry, and you should not be angry. You should not be feeling
Yeah.
sad. You should, kind of show to the world that you've got your shit together.
Yep.
You need to be showing that you are happy and you are successful and all of these kinds of things. But the truth is, everyone is going through a human experience where it's going to be 50%
Mhm.
positive and 50% negative. And the thing
Right.
is, when you can make peace with the negative, then you're not going to need to kind of eat and all of that. So often
Mhm.
it's having those discussions and seeing okay, how do you want to say it to your family member? What do you want to say
Mhm.
to them? How do you want to communicate it to them? And the real thing is, you can't control what the other person is going to say or what they're going to do.
Absolutely.
And so
Right.
Mhm.
how are you going to respond regardless of what they say and do? And this is the
Right.
Yeah.
this is the practice. It's not a one-time wonder. You've got to practice
Mhm.
this.
Right.
So the first time, my cousins used to say to me, because I was always the person who was eating all the time, right? I used to have the third dessert, and they used to say,
Yeah.
come on, eat it. And I would be like, no, I'm okay, thank you. No, come on, eat it. Do it for me. I'm your brother. That means you don't love me. All of this stuff. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so intense. But I said, look, bro,
Yeah.
I absolutely love you, but this isn't me anymore. And then they used to say things like, oh, so you're on a diet again, are you? And I had to deal with so much of that. And so do so many of my
Yeah.
clients. So men, women, both, they kind
Yeah.
of just want to make it easier for themselves and be like, oh, but when you're trying to make it easier for yourself by not dealing with that root cause, you make it harder for yourself in the
Mhm.
long run.
Right.
Yeah. So two questions that come to mind for me, and I'll try not to stack them. But one of them, you mentioned this being in your body, right? Understanding how food makes you
Yeah.
feel in your body. Now, I think for many of us in this generation, we sort of have an idea of what that means, right? What that looks like. But for our parents' generation, what I've noticed is that's not actually something they understand, right? When I say, that doesn't feel good in my body, or I don't, it makes my stomach hurt or whatever else. And this is just supposition. This is not fact. But I feel like there has been so much trauma through the partition, generational trauma, all of this stuff, to where so many of our parents don't actually have that sense of interoception, right? That internal, uh, they have the intelligence, but they're not aware of
Yeah.
it. And so how have you found success in conveying that the additional helping of Garhi isn't going to actually do me any favors?
Mhm.
What we try and look at is the intention behind giving the extra, serving of goodie. The
Okay.
reason why my mum is doing that is because she wants to show me love. She wants me
Right.
Mhm.
to be nourished. And the only
Yeah.
way she knows to do that is to feed me, because they don't know any
Mhm.
other way. Because there was
Right.
no other way of saying, hey, you know what, I really value you. I'm so happy that you're my daughter or whatever. They won't use these kinds of words. So their way of
Mhm.
showing love is often
Mhm.
either telling you off and saying you're doing things wrong because they want to try and help you grow, or feeding you, right? And so
Yeah.
I had to,
Mhm.
the same thing happened with my mother-in-law, and the same thing with my husband. He has to work on this too, because often he'll interpret things in a certain way, but actually when we look at the intention behind why they're doing that,
Right.
you get to see. I think this is something that I learned in my inner child work when I learned how to
Mhm.
do inner child work, where when you see the other person and you see their child in them. When I see my
Yeah.
mum as a little girl, or my mother-in-law as a little girl, or my Massey who's telling me all of these things as a little girl, and they're being so rude sometimes or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, She just doesn't know how to
Yeah.
convey this, and that's okay. She's just
Right.
struggling with something. Now, it takes
Yeah.
practice. It's not like I couldn't get to this overnight. It took me years of practice. But now I really am at that stage where when my mother-in-law is telling me, "Oh, well, you didn't put enough salt in the dal," I can be okay with that. I'd be like,
Mm,
"Oh, did I? Oh, sorry." As opposed to, "Oh
yeah.
my gosh, she's so ungrateful. She I'm giving her the dal and she doesn't, you know, all of this." It doesn't need to be a drama. And so
Yeah.
the reason why this is so important for weight management is because the reason why we overeat is not because we don't have enough willpower or we don't know what foods to eat or anything like that. It's because we're holding so much weight of society. We're holding so
Yeah.
much weight of other people's
Yes.
expectations, and we don't know how to manage that. We don't know how
Right.
to uphold our own personal boundaries, where we say, this is what we're going to do if that happens, instead of trying
Yeah.
to control the other people. And so often, so
Yeah.
many of us live in victim mentality where we're blaming the other person or
Mhm.
where we're constantly being like, oh, he did this. So let me just quickly just like grab an extra handful of nuts. It doesn't even
Mhm.
have to be bad foods, you know, it can be foods that, you
Correct.
know, that you feel nourish you and things. But anytime you're eating more than you need,
Mhm.
that's when it turns into emotional overeating.
Yeah.
Mm.
So good. I love that answer. It's always, what is their intent? What is their, there's always, we're acting from a place of hurt or a place of love, right? So that's what drives the outcome. I love that you mentioned thinking about your the person in front of you as a small child and seeing what unmet needs they had and now how that's manifesting in them versus finding fault with them. The other question I had was you mentioned this interaction with your brothers, right? And then, of course, we don't want to even go into the toxic relation of like, if you don't do X, that means you don't love me, But what you said that really got my attention was this idea of identity,
Mm.
right? When you said, that's not me anymore. And that it's hard to reconcile for family members who have only seen you in a certain light, right? I just wanted to see if you could pull that apart a little bit more, because it is something that I think many people get tied down to, is this sense of they feel inauthentic, right? When they're trying to forge a new identity,
Yeah.
but yet they're being told, yeah, but who you are is somebody who eats that third piece of cake,
Yeah.
or that always gets upset when, XYZ happens, or you have that fourth glass of wine. That's who you are.
This was something that I personally had to work on a lot. And James Clear in Atomic Habits often talks about when you
Yeah.
really want to make a habit stronger and more likely to follow through, you want to change at an identity level. So this
Right.
is work where you really want to work and think about, what is that identity that I'm walking into? Who am I changing into? And you're not kind of like changing into a different person. You're just becoming more of who you are. You're becoming more authentic to you.
Exactly.
And I
Right.
recently coached one of my male clients on this. And he's a very successful entrepreneur. He was always known as the big guy, and he does a lot of
Mm.
networking and things. So he's often needing to go out for meals out and lots of drinking and things like that. And so he often talks about, like, we've had to do a lot of identity work with him, because he's often like, that's what they expect from me. That's what they've always seen from me. My
Mm-hmm.
social media has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of all of this. So that's what people are expecting. So we had to do a lot of work on, is it okay that now you are changing? And what will that, how will you respond to them when they're reacting that way? How do you want to feel in your body? And how can we create that for you? And then when we did that work, it was much easier for him to say, hey, I don't drink anymore. Or, hey, I'm doing intermittent fasting now. My window's actually closed. I'm not actually eating past 8 o'clock. And so it was easier for him. Don't get me wrong, it was still tough initially for the first few times, especially with his immediate people, because they were like, why are you changing? Because remember, the primitive brain doesn't like change. It wants you to seek
Right.
pleasure, avoid pain, and stay how you are to avoid change.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anything that you're doing is different, even for your immediate family members, it's going to trigger that primitive brain to act out and be like, hey, I don't like this. Let's get it back to how it was. So that's the reason why, when you can hold space for yourself in that and then activate your prefrontal cortex, which is the higher part of your brain, that's when you can do some reasoning. You can hold space for dealing with the discomfort in the short term for that long-term gain.
A lot of this is resonating because obviously we both went through the life coach school, and it really highlights how quickly our brain can turn into a 2-year-old toddler, and we go into default, and these little sentences are just running around our brain. And if we don't catch them and pluck them out, and we don't give that importance as something to do, um, and practice that muscle to be
Mhm.
aware of our thoughts, they really can hijack our lives.
Mm.
And our identities can get wrapped up so quickly, and then we wake up 10 years later, like, how did this become my
Mm.
identity? I
Mhm.
started out being this athlete that played basketball, and now I'm the one who's got a bad knee, a bad back, and
Mm.
I'm the one who's drinking happy hour,
Mm.
or this is my favorite
Mhm.
food. How did that happen? And I also liked what you said about the inner child. I think that's I haven't done any inner child work, but I think seeing people, um, we all hear that those who are hurt others, right? And
Mhm.
that sounds great. It's a
Mm.
great cliche, but we really don't internalize and fully understand what that
Mm.
means. It just almost seems as a way to insulate or
Mm.
excuse someone from doing something. But I'll share a story about inner child work, and I know we talked about it in relationship to people older than us or our age. But I think it's also important to remember that our kids are
Mhm.
kids. And
Yep.
oftentimes, as parents, because we're high achieving, we're ambitious, we expect them to act as little
Yeah.
adults. When Mel Robbins recently said, most adults are kids just in
Yeah.
larger bodies, right?
Yes.
And I'll tell you a story. We were just on a Disney cruise, and one of the things they have there, I don't know if you guys have been, is this Bippity Boppity Boutique,
Oh gosh,
where
yes.
little girls go in and they can get their hair and makeup. And my daughter wants to get her nails done, wants to get her makeup. So we did it. But she's also very shy still. She's almost 4. And she went through, she got her hair done, and her eyes, her makeup, and everything done. And then when she came out, I wanted to take a picture, right? Because it was only going to last for so long because we're going into the pool. And she was so angry at me, just so angry that she wasn't speaking. She was just screaming at me in the most guttural, visceral voice, and that I could see her tonsils
Oh.
getting red and just screaming at me. So I was holding her, and she kept screaming, screaming, and screaming. And this is the middle of the ship. This is about and everyone's walking around like, "Is that your kid? Should you be taking a child that's screaming?" They're looking that way. And I remember just looking at her and being like, okay, why is she screaming? And why is she not talking? Why is she not calm? And it occurred to me in that moment that she didn't have a way to communicate to me what she was feeling.
Right.
And it could be
Right.
anything. Her hair could be too tight. She could be scared. She was angry that I took Jay in to get ice cream and came back, right? And I couldn't help it. I just started, like, tears started streaming down my face because I was
Yeah.
holding her, and I was like, okay, we've gotten to a point where we can't communicate,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And she was just screaming. And it reminded me of like a movie where, like your kid says, okay, I'm done. I'm moving out of the house. I'm running away. I'm never coming out. You're like, okay, all my rules out the window. You just, it's all fine. Whatever you want to do, whoever you want to marry, whatever face tattoo you want to get, if you want to smoke in your room, all that's fine. You're just stay in the house, please. Right. And so, and then what was interesting is that she saw my tears, and
Mhm.
she realized that I couldn't communicate to her what I was feeling, this frustration. And then guess what? She stopped screaming,
Mm.
Mhm.
right? And so I when you said that inner child work, it reminded
Yeah.
me that too often, not only do we put on other people, but ourselves, this
Mhm.
obligation to act and behave and show up in a very adult way.
It's so important to model to children how
Yeah.
to manage your emotions. And that's
Mhm.
something that
Yeah.
I'm really working on. I feel like I'm an emotions expert, but still every day I'm diving in deeper and deeper with my
Yep.
kids. It feels like they rip your heart out and kind of like your heart is outside of you, and then you're kind of like figuring out how to like manage it. But
Yeah.
when I think the one of the reasons why I wanted to do this work so much was because I wanted to model to my children how to manage their mind and
Yeah.
how to actually feel their emotions in their body and how to
Mhm.
Yeah.
actually live a healthy like lifestyle. I don't mean just with
Yeah.
food or anything or with exercise. I mean with mental hygiene, with kind of
Mm.
spiritual
Yes.
hygiene. And so
Yeah.
the thing is, initially I was like, why aren't they doing it? I'm telling them to do it. Why aren't they doing it? And then
Yeah.
one thing clicked sometimes where I was like, oh, they don't do things that I tell them to do. They do things that they see me doing, and then they just kind of
Mhm.
absorb that this is the way to do it. So they
Yeah.
do as they see rather than what we tell them to. And so that's
Yeah.
when it clicked to me that I've got to be that version of myself to empower my children, especially in a
Yeah.
world where emotional like stuff is kind of like, we live in a very dopamine driven world, right? There's lots of video
Yeah.
games, there's lots of food with a lot of sugar and flour, which is going to spike your dopamine. Netflix, like fast shopping, fast food, like there's stuff everywhere that's going to generate dopamine. So when you can get them to generate dopamine within themselves by feeling their
Yes.
emotions, by like just basic habits of maybe
Mm.
meditation, feeling their emotions, mind management, journaling, anything that's going to help them, I think that that's the biggest gift you can give to your children.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Our whole family dynamic changed the moment I started managing my emotions, understanding my emotions, and handling them in a different way. I mean, I could not say enough about how much our family dynamic has shifted, and it's been really incredible to watch. These kids actually circumvent a lot of the stress and peer pressure that they can succumb to. Of course, they're still going to feel it,
Yeah.
right? But they have a roadmap essentially to come back to, all right, what do I know to have worked well for me, right?
Mhm.
They've had experience managing their own mind so that when they don't, they all see that chasm. And it's almost like an autogenous, like, oh, that didn't feel good. Let me go back to what does feel good,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But Dinesh, what you were sharing about the boat really reminded me of Eckhart Tolle's book, The
Mm.
Power of Now. He talks about the power of being present in a challenging situation and not resorting to fixing the problem,
Yeah.
but just being present. No words, just holding space. Because eventually what happens is your highest consciousness kicks in with the other person's and communicates beyond what a spoken word can. And so just holding presence and learning, Amruti, I'm sure you work on this with your clients, is how long can you stay in the ick
Mhm.
to where then it releases on its own?
Yeah.
Because that staying present is the only thing that's going to release
Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing
faster.
that I often say to my clients is looking at it like separating yourself from the actual emotion or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
experience it is. So it could be like in Buddhism, they often talk about awareness being separate from your actual body. That could be
Mhm.
something. If that doesn't resonate, then looking at it like I'm separate to my thinking and my emotions. So looking at it like waves on an ocean, or
Mhm.
you being on the platform of a train station and
Yeah.
thoughts like going on by as trains, that could help. And sometimes that really helps me, even in the stage that I'm in, like where sometimes when I'm really angry at my children or when I'm really annoyed that my husband's not done the thing that I asked him to do or whatever it is, I can really use that, where because often what we
Mhm.
think is we then feel bad for thinking these things, or
Mhm.
but when you can hold space for your whole human experience, being all
Yeah.
of those emotions and knowing that that doesn't define you, that doesn't mean you're a bad person or anything, it's just a wave in the ocean, but you are the ocean. That can be such a profound kind of mindset shift, so that when you are experiencing anger, you are not an angry person. When you are
Yeah.
Mhm.
experiencing disappointment, you are not a sad or depressed person. You are just
Mhm.
Mhm.
experiencing that emotion, and it doesn't have to be then like something that you internalize.
We've been focusing on someone who is overweight,
Yeah.
and our mess is our message. So we're talking to your younger version at some level. We're talking about your younger version,
Yeah.
and help us understand the line between where we take action to change our lives or we accept our lives. And what I'm driving at is that not everyone that's overweight wants to lose the weight.
Mm.
And there's a lot of body
Yeah.
positivity. There's a lot of thought or leadership around right now of just accepting someone the
Yeah.
way they are. right?
Mhm.
Talk to us about that line, because I want to make sure that we're not saying to people that if the scale or the numbers or the blood tests show something, then you choose your buffet, but this is one option as well. You got to change your life. How do we balance that? Because the sticky part that we get to is, I know I want to change. I wish I was lighter. I
Mm,
wish I'd lost the 92 pounds.
mm,
But because I haven't been able to do it, I'm going to put on a mask and say, you know what? I'm happy with the way I am. I
Mhm.
like me, right? And I don't want to change any longer.
yeah,
And you don't have to make me change. And now we're using this as a defense mechanism
mhm,
to tell people to back off, right? And we're using weight, but we could use it anyway,
yeah,
right? We can say, well, I'm a diabetic now, or
yeah,
I'm just an angry person, or
Mhm.
I'm an emotional person and I'm going to have my
mhm,
outbursts, or I'm a night owl and that means I can't wake up. Whatever identity we're holding on to,
mm,
but from almost of a darker place, because we're unable to reconcile the new identity or achieve it. So we dig into this identity and say, world, you got to be okay with the way I am because I'm okay with the way I am.
mm. That's so common in so many of the people that I coach. And I think the main thing is asking yourself and being truthful with yourself without anyone else there, with what do I truly want? And some people genuinely don't want to lose weight, and that's completely fine. But
Yeah.
they don't want to hate themselves. And so
Mhm.
if you know that this is something that you're like, if you feel like you're hating yourself or you're not liking the way you look and you just feel it's not possible for you, and so then you're shifting to the body positivity and stuff, then it may be worth like that's just going to be a shield. It's just going to be a band-aid. But the wound is still
Yeah.
like festering underneath. Basically, it's not been dealt with. So you've got to deal with the wound and clean it out and
Mhm.
then understand it and let it heal. And so the way to
Yeah.
do that is actually accepting the way you are right now,
Yeah.
not needing to change. And so the
Mm,
thing is, most people think, oh no, I need to want to change, and that's the only thing that's going to fuel me. That's not true. When you can actually accept your current reality exactly how it is, that can be the fuel to change. Because when you are accepting yourself exactly how you are, when you are thinking of yourself highly, then you're
Mhm.
going to want to feel your body properly. You're going to want to move
yeah.
your body in a loving way. You're
Yeah.
going to want to look after yourself and care for yourself. So that is
Yeah.
another fuel. But most people don't know how to
Mhm.
experience that because they're so used to pushing themselves, pushing themselves, pushing themselves to fit in
Mhm.
with a cultural like paradigm.
Right.
But that doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the case. So acceptance is the first step. True acceptance, where actually, if I never change, that's okay. And I'm going to do everything in my power. So, one thing that I teach about is the difference between attachment,
Hmm.
detachment, and non attachment. So,
Mm,
attachment is being very attached to your result. I need to get it. I need to make this result like happen. And so, you're going to do everything
Mhm.
in your power. You're going to hustle your way there. Detachment is, oh, F it. I don't need to do it anymore. Like it's not working, just
yeah.
whatever. That's detachment. But what you want to aim towards is something called non-attachment, where
Mm,
you are doing everything in your power. You are doing it for you, but you are not attached to the result or when you are going
yeah.
to achieve it. When you can
So
get to
Mhm.
good.
that place, then you're going to still be all in, but you're not
Yeah.
attached to the result.
Yeah, I would even say you're more than all in, because now
Yeah.
you're using your discretionary time from a place of curiosity
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
tinker and figure stuff out. This conjures up someone in their garage working till the middle of the night because they're not attached to results, they're attached to the effort, right? But
Mhm.
but I want to ask you a question. I run these informal surveys all the time, and I ask people, how's your day going? And, I'll get sometimes, oh, great day. I'll get fine. Man, it's going. No one ever says to me, my day is awful today. I'd rather not talk about it. Or I want to talk about it. No one ever says that it's awful, but they use words of mediocrity and convey that they're not great, right? So I'm willing to bet that if I ran an informal survey and I asked 100 people, hey, how many of you hate your life? I'll get crickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone will tell me some
Mm.
format of 50 to 100. It's
Yeah.
okay. I've had better days.
Mm.
We're going through a challenge right now, but we're surviving. Life is great.
Mm.
But no one's going to tell me from 49 to 0 that I hate my life. But how prevalent is this? When you're seeing it, and do you have a litmus test for us to cut through the noise and stop lying to ourselves and say, okay, maybe I should explore and take seriously
Mm.
that what Amruti's talking about, where I need to accept my life and I'm hating it, and I'm using all these buffers to make me feel better, and that's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I've got to put that down now and, okay, just admit that I hate my life so that I can start to rebuild.
Yeah. I think so many people, they don't like using these kinds of words because
Right.
they're under the pretense that I should be grateful. I've got so much
Mhm.
Yeah.
positive going on in my life. I shouldn't be also I shouldn't be telling the world about this. This is something that most people think I should just know how to manage this by myself. Why don't I know?
Yeah.
Everyone on social media seems to have their SHIT together. Why can't I? So often
Yeah.
that is the paradigm. Whereas deep down, what's really going on is, yeah, there may be things going really well in their lives, they don't know how to enjoy it because they've
Mm.
got
Mhm.
so much pressure from their own brain of it should have gone better. I should have done more or whatever it is. So when you're in that scarcity, you're not going to be able to access the abundance. And so when you can say to people, even if your life, so most people only take action when their life is really, really bad and then they want to kind of get
Yeah.
it to normal or thriving. But the people who really see great success are people who are having a mediocre life but want to go to having an amazing life.
Mhm.
When you can allow yourself, you give yourself that allowance to really go for it, to really allow yourself to invest in yourself, time, money, energy, then that's when you are doing ultimate self-care, right? You're
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
fueling what your kind of soul really needs. And when you can do that and allow yourself that, then things start opening up, because then you're kind of going to be inviting in things that you never even knew were possible.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I loved about what you just said there is inviting in things that you never knew were possible, because you have that non-attachment. Now you're not trying to control what and how, and you can let it come to you with less effort.
Yeah.
Right. We've told ourselves we need to grind it out.
Yeah.
We need to quote unquote earn it. It should feel hard. Otherwise you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
And it's if you believe it's true, it will be. But there is an alternative.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But one thing I kind of wanted to ask about a little bit more was, Dinesh was talking about this one mindset. But the other thing that came to mind, especially when it comes to things like parenting, is we're told by society that X is supposed to be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Y is supposed to be hard, right? Marriage is hard, raising kids is hard, kids are stressful. The way to deal with that is to have a drink, right? That's the messaging we're told.
Mm-hmm.
So what have you seen in terms of helping people recognize, wait, that's a potentially really unhealthy. It's never beneficial to preach at someone, of
Yeah.
course, but there is a role that we play as coaches in saying, this is a spot that you could potentially improve in. When someone is just inundated with these societal messages, they've been given, in essence, this algorithm to operate from. And now we're saying, but what if there's a different?
I think it sparks curiosity. The person who
Yeah.
is interested in changing an aspect, a lot of the times they don't even know that there's another way.
Yeah.
It's our duty as coaches to kind of show them the other way without preaching, as you said, right? Also, when we are chasing false pleasures or escaping our lives, that's very
Mhm.
different to living our lives. So actually
Mhm.
finding some sort of alternative to the kind of escapism. So in terms
Yeah.
of overeating, over drinking, gambling, porn, over Netflixing, overworking, even any of these overing behaviors, they're kind of inbuilt in society. And often we have like some sort of badge that we get for it, for doing these kinds of things, because it helps us fit in with the vast majority of people. But actually, so much of it is learning how to not get as much of a big dopamine hit from, because when you do any of these false pleasures, you get a huge dopamine hit, but actually
Sure.
like learning how to incorporate some of the natural pleasures into your life. So eating food that's fuel
Yeah.
for your body, moving your body in a loving way, water, sex, accomplishment, connection, cleanliness, any of these kinds of things, stillness as well, nature. When you're doing these kinds of things, then you're getting smaller dopamine hits, but there's no net negative. There's no kind of like bad thing that happens at the end of it. And so,
Yeah.
for example, if I'm over shopping, I'm feeling great in the moment and I'm getting huge dopamine hit. But then the things arrive and I'm like, oh great, I'm declutter. I mean, I'm meant to be decluttering my home and I'm cluttering it up even more, and my credit card bill is huge, right? So that's a false pleasure. So you have to look at, this is me, I'm speaking from experience. You have to look at, okay, what can I do instead? Like the urge is there to kind of like go on,
Yeah.
ASOS or whatever and start shopping. But actually, what is it that I truly need? And asking yourself, how can I give myself that? So really what I'm really needing is a little bit of stimulation, a little bit of connection. So how can I get that connection? Do I need to give someone a call? Do I need to go and connect with myself in nature? Do I need to go and give my husband a hug or my kids a hug? Like, what is it that will
Yeah.
actually deal with the reason why I'm doing that? And so when
Yeah.
there's a person who's in that, they know what they deep down want. They
Yeah.
may not be able to access it because that they don't know that there's another way. And also, when you can kind of just incorporate a few of these simple pleasures, these natural pleasures into your life, you'll realize, oh wow, those false pleasures, they don't feel as good anymore. Like when I
Yeah.
eat a lot of sugar and flour now, I feel bloating and I don't feel very good in my body. And so I actually crave more of these natural pleasures. So when you
Yeah.
get to a point where you're allowing yourself to experience these natural pleasures, knowing that they're never going to give you the same amount of dopamine as the false pleasures, that's when you are like, okay, I'm willing to accept the slightly lower dopamine for the long-term gain.
A great book on that is Dopamine Nation. I
Mm.
think it helps you understand how dopamine runs our lives and we're chasing it, and the way to reset your dopamine so that things that once gave us joy or we know should be good for us actually can come back on the radar
Yeah.
and be part of our lives.
Yeah.
But I want to take a hard right turn, Amruti. From everything that you said, really impressive. You're the real deal. I encourage people to check you out, to work with you, all of those things. But there's one identity that we have completely skated past, right? We talked about the doctor, we talked about the mom, we talked about you helping people. But underneath all of it is what I can see is a very brave person, right? Whether it's a brave woman, it's a brave individual, because the identity that we skated by is that you're a successful businesswoman. And so many of us are in a place in life where we're questioning our career choices, our profession, or things like that. And we never talked about you making this pivot out of doctoring, right? Which is a very highly esteemed profession. And you're crushing it right now. So I want you to, if you're willing, right? I want you to, for a minute, kiss humility to the wind, right? Where this is a non-humble space. Tell us about your business. Tell us about how many people you're helping.
Yeah.
I want to give our audience a little bit of inspiration
Yeah.
that if there's someone out there who is, working a job or thinking that this is not for them,
Mm.
and could there be something else that they could spend for the next 20 years of life that lights them up, that they can make potentially, I'm going to go out on a limb because I maybe know some things, maybe I don't, that could make more money than they're making right now in their
Mm.
current job
Mm.
with less hours and less stress, right? Tell us about that.
Okay, so this was a huge, huge step for me. I'm someone who was very risk averse and I hated, any uncertainty. But as you know, entrepreneurship is quite up and down, very uncertain at times. And
Yeah.
so also going from a doctor identity, which is kind of like highest up the ladder, especially in the South Asian community, to then telling people
Right below lawyers.
right
Right
below
below
lawyers
lawyers. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
and
No,
dentists.
doctors, you can have the top spot. You can
Hey,
have the top
we're
spot.
doctors, man.
From there to what is even a life coach? What are you doing? Like, what you're giving up clinical practice? You've spent so long practicing, you've spent over 10 years studying, you've spent over 10 years practicing. What are you doing? And so
Yeah.
that was huge for me, like to be able to say, actually, no, this is my calling in life. This is what God put me on this earth to do. This is my purpose. And actually, I'm going to live that out. But it was
Mhm.
brave. I had to be very brave and courageous in that because everyone else was looking at me like, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah.
But that is what woke me up in the morning. That is what gave me that drive every morning. When I could
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
how my clients are changing their entire lives just by, coming to me for weight loss coaching, that's just the entry point in. And that's just the beginning for them, And I was like,
Yeah.
this is sending ripples out into the whole world. So I was like, how can I not do this? So
Yeah.
when I actually gave up clinical practice, that was really hard because I was like giving up like my license to practice, and I can always go
Yeah.
back, but I'd have to retrain a little bit and stuff. And I just said to myself, I trust myself enough that, especially because I'm quite spiritual as well, especially if I feel God is on my side, then there's nothing to worry about. I'm never going to be like without anything or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it really helped me lean into my purpose. And so with that, I had to learn how to run a business. I had to
Yeah.
learn how to do the marketing, do the website stuff, do the podcast, do all of this stuff all by myself. I
Mhm.
didn't have
Mhm.
anyone other than a VA once. And that was hard because I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just winging it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And the truth is, when you know you can help people and when you can speak their language and they trust you, and I've got a knack of really connecting to people on a very deep level very quickly. And so
Yeah.
I help people feel heard, seen, like loved, validated very quickly. So that is my superpower. So that's basically what we're doing in coaching, right? I'm really holding a very
Yeah.
safe space for them and holding them
Sure.
in their most vulnerable moments and actually helping them like with tools to come out of that and achieve the
Mhm.
result they want to achieve. So I was like, okay, this is what we've got to do. So I set up one-to-one coaching and then I set up my groups. And now I have my one-to-one coaching, which people come to for everything. I've got my group for women, weight loss coaching for women. And I've started my weight loss coaching for men because I realized that there was so much of a need for this because people are doing all the traditional things, but not getting their results, a lot of them. And so I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is where I need to put my kind of my mark on the world, like build my legacy. I want people to
Yeah.
remember me as the person who really helped them change their lives, and not just their life, but the life of their children, the life of the people around them, because it
Mhm.
just like it goes. There's a ripple effect. And so the mother-in-law course was really huge for me as well because it was very vulnerable, right? To actually talk about my mother-in-law and like our relationship
Yes.
and like in a public platform on webinars in my coaching, like marketing about it, my mother-in-law reading my posts, my husband reading them and saying, oh wow, okay, that was a bit personal. I had
Yeah.
to delve really deep into all of these relationships. But now
Yeah.
we've come to a place where my mother-in-law and I can go on holiday together without anyone
So
else.
good.
We can go on walks together. We never used to be able to be in the same room together, and now we are like really good buddies. And it doesn't mean
Yeah.
she's changed or I've changed. Like, what we've done is we've learned how to like manage ourselves in a
Yeah.
way that really works for our family. And I can't thank my past self enough for doing that. So I want to
Yeah.
give that gift to other people. So that's the reason why I do what I do.
It's so good. And I was just telling my husband and my son yesterday, the people in our lives that challenge us the most, those are our teachers, right? And I'm like you, I'm really very spiritual. I love this idea of spiritual contracts to where, before we were in this human body,
Yeah.
there's communication that happens, there's imprintation that happens with the world that exists beyond our physical. And so when someone, for me it was my son, that comes into our life and challenges us in a way that is very visceral. And, you want to throw in the towel. You want to just say like, you want to push them away, or you want to, go to a very dark place yourself. But those are the teachers, right? Those are the people who love you the most, who it seems like they don't like you at all. They maybe even hate you. They're there to teach you to show you the greatest potential that you have in yourself. And so I love, 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 love that you not only recognize that, but that you went ahead, did the work, healed yourself, healed your family. You're here with your mother-in-law, and now you're showing other people how to do that. Because it's such a traditionally adversarial relationship, even in Western culture, right? The in-laws.
Yep.
So this is it's such healing work. And it's really incredible to see how much you've brought.
Yeah.
And I could not agree more. Generational, infinite change. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So good. I was just looking at your Facebook profile, and you legitimately have MIL expert on there. So kudos. I mean, that's so great. I love it. Well, Amruti, we're so glad that we made this happen. I know it took a little while to schedule you, but we're here. We got it done. But before we let you go, we wanted to take a little bit more of your time to do our world famous Happy and Human wrap up. So, out of all of your experiences as a doctor, as a mother-in-law expert, I still chuckle at that. And because that's, I always think about what types of professions exist today that never existed before.
Yeah.
And, we can
Mother-in-law
legitimately
expert.
make a living teaching about all things mother-in-laws.
Yes, it's a big thing.
It's a big thing. It's an unmet need. I love it. So from your life living in England and perhaps drinking Ribena and all the things that you're familiar with, tell us one thing that you know without a doubt that if someone who listened to this podcast and implemented today, in short order, their life will be better.
Really paying attention to the thoughts in your brain and the signals in your body will change your entire life.
Yeah. There was a research study for those skeptics in the room that are like, mind thoughts, bleh, that doesn't really work. Japanese researchers blindfolded a group of students and told them that their right arms were being rubbed with a poison ivy plant. Afterward, all 13 students' arms reacted with the classic symptoms of poison ivy: itching, boils, and redness. Not surprising, until you found out that the plant used for the study wasn't poison ivy at all, just a harmless shrub. The students' beliefs were actually strong enough to create the biological effects of poison ivy, even though no such plant had touched them. So that was just from The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. But I thought that was such a powerful indicator and validator of what you just said.
Yeah. This is why I believe that when kids are born, you should teach them that broccoli is actually called ice cream. So when they're out in the world and they're like, "Can I have some ice cream?" and then actual ice cream shows up, they're very confused. They're like, "No, I want that green thing."
Yeah.
Because it's all in their thoughts. I'm kidding.
So funny.
So good. That's a great study.
So, Amruti, this is really one of my favorite parts of the show. It's called Ask It Forward. So, listeners, if you're new, here's how this works. The guest previous has asked a question, not knowing who we would be interviewing next, what we would be talking about, even when we were recording. You get to answer that question, and then you get to leave a question for the next guest. This question is from Dr. Jay Butt, who is the dancing doctor. He's talked about all sorts of the wonderful things that can happen when we bring our whole authentic selves to even serious roles like patient care. Jay's question was, what's one word that comes to mind for you that you want to embody in the next year moving forward?
I think it's kind of two words, but it's the same thing, like let go. I want to learn how to let go of the need to control people, of control like things that are going on outside of me. So maybe release. I think I want to let go of extra clutter, extra thoughts that aren't helping me, all of that. So it's probably declutter, release, let go.
Such a powerful practice. And that means it's your turn.
Okay. The question is, what are you working towards today to contribute to your legacy?
That's a good one. Listeners, we always encourage you to answer these questions yourselves. Really try to dig deep and take even just 2 or 3 minutes. And if you can't think of the answer, because that's a big question.
Yeah.
If you can't come up with an answer, that's okay. As I love this practice of acceptance, Amruti, that you talked about, but just having asked the question now opens up your brain to seeing the answer whenever it does become more conscious. So,
and the
Yeah.
reason
so
I said
exciting.
working towards today is because many people may think, oh, I haven't done that yet, but it's actually, there's still
Yeah.
more of today left. You can still go out
Yeah.
and do something, even if it's 5 minutes of meditation, even if it's a walk in nature, even if it's having a positive conversation with your children. All of this is building your legacy.
Mhm.
Final part of our wrap up before we give you a chance to tell everyone where they can meet you
Yeah.
is that we don't really have a good mechanism to say thank you other than saying thank you.
Mm.
So what we do here at the Happy and Human podcast for your time and all the time you spent with us preparing for the show is to give you the opportunity to share an organization or a cause that's near and dear to your heart so that Seema and I can make a contribution to that organization on behalf of you in your name. Do you have one in mind?
Yeah, I love Mind UK. It's there's probably another one in the US and everything as well. It helps to advocate for mental health in all people, including children. So it's so powerful, and I love the work that they do.
I love it. It's the second
Incredible.
time Mind has come up. Colby Sharma,
Okay,
Yeah.
who is in the UK, also mentioned Mind.
nice.
So we're
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. So good. Amruti, before we let you jet off, tell the listeners where they can connect with you and learn how to work with you and all those other wonderful things.
So firstly, thank you so much for having me on. And the best way that you can contact me is either through my website, which is www.amruticoaching.com, or you can find me on Instagram. I have a one-to-one coaching practice. I have a group coaching for men and a group coaching program for women for weight loss. And I also have a course on how to get on with your mother-in-law without her changing.